When we talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, they have had the reputation of being a cheap organization. Now, they have made some strides in, I guess you can say, changing that narrative when they signed someone like a T. Higgins and they signed someone like a Jamar Chase, I'm sorry, this offseason to contract extensions, something that they're not used to doing. You can see, oh, shoot, okay, this might be a new day and age for the Cincinnati Bengals. But like I said, your true nature is always going to seep through. Before I continue, let's paint a picture really quick. I'm sure people remember, but for the people that have forgotten, last year, the Cincinnati Bengals had a historic year. All around the board, it was historic. They had a Triple Crown winner at the quarterback or at the wide receiver position. Joe Burrow had a all-time season. Trey Hendrickson had an all-time season. And even with all that, the team still did not make the playoffs. So Joe Burrow had a historic season. Jamar Chase had a historic season. Trey Hendrickson had an historic season. And the team as a whole had a historic season, maybe not in the best way. And the reason why they did not make the playoffs was solely based on their defense. Their defense was poor. They had game after game after game, they were in shootouts, and the defense just could not hold up. Trey Hendrickson was great, led the league in sacks. But Jermaine Pratt was okay. I think he was amongst the league leaders or team leaders in tackles. But overall, especially when we talk about the secondary, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. And with all that, they did not make the playoffs. So with that being painted, and then, like I said, this offseason you paid T. Higgins, who has been in a contract dispute with them for years now, it seems. You re-sign Jamar Chase. Things are looking up. As we sit here today, it almost seems like the whole T. Higgins and Jamar Chase thing happened years ago, because the same issues that plague the Cincinnati Bengals are plaguing them now. Remember, I just painted the picture that the reason why they did not make the playoffs last year after having a historic season for multiple players is because of their defense. As we sit here today, Trey Hendrickson is holding out still and is not going to return to the team unless he gets a new contract, but it looks like they're not trying to give him what he's asking for. They let go of Jermaine Pratt. They let him walk. Again, I know that people are saying, all you're looking at is tackles and you're not looking at anything else. Yeah. Because the defense was so poor last year, you need something. And your defense was so bad last year, your two best defenders, I know it was bad, but your two best defenders are currently not with the team. And then it gets to the meat and potatoes of this topic. And that is, you spend a first-round draft pick on Shemar Stewart, incredible football player. And even with your rookies, you find a way to have contract disputes. Shemar Stewart is currently not with the team. He left mandatory minicamp because he is the only rookie that has not signed his contract. And I understand and I support him completely. Now, I will say this. As the Cincinnati Bengals, as the employer, as the one that is giving out the contracts, you are able to give whatever give out whatever contract you want, right? Whatever contract you think someone deserves, you're able to offer. Whatever stipulations are in that contract, you are well within your right to put in it because you are the person dishing out the contracts. In the same breath, the player is also well in his right to either sign or not sign. The issue with this whole thing is the wording in the contract. The Cincinnati Bengals find themselves trying to do something that they've never done, and trying to do something that I don't think has been done before in the league, or if it has been done in the league before, very far and few between. The verbiage in the contract for Shemar Stewart, the one that he is not trying to sign, essentially says, if you do something once, the Cincinnati Bengals has the ability to void any guaranteed money, not just for that season, but for the entirety of the contract. Now, I don't know Shemar Stewart. Obviously, I don't know him personally. I don't know what he gets into off the field. But the Cincinnati Bengals felt it was important to put a clause where if you do something that the team deems essentially bad off the field, they can void all the guarantee money from the entire contract. While, yes, he could be the wildest person off the field, but you still spent a first-round pick on him. And if I see that this topic is dividing fans, which it makes sense. There are people that are obviously in support of the Cincinnati Bengals because they're Bengals fans, and then there are people that are in support of Shemar Stewart. I find myself in support of Shemar Stewart, even though I do understand that the Cincinnati Bengals is well in their right to put whatever they want in the contract. But I also understand that Shemar Stewart is well in his right to want to sign it or not want to sign it. Here's my thing. Why are you trying to set a precedent right now? Because again, I don't know what goes on with every contract, but it seems like this is a very rare situation. You're telling me if I do one thing, you have an opportunity to take essentially the entire contract or guaranteed money out of the contract. Why would I ever sign that? Because what happens if something happens year one? That means for the next 4 years, 4 years, I don't get guaranteed money. And then, I'm not saying they would do this, but what if something happens that I don't deem as bad, but they do? Then they can take the money. This stipulation solely helps the Cincinnati Bengals and is essentially hinders the player. And again, from what we're hearing, all the reports, this isn't something that is regularly happening. So I ask, why is the Cincinnati Bengals setting a precedent now? Because, again, this is a fragile situation. And I mean fragile because, again, mandatory training camp has started. This is getting to a point where if he doesn't report to the team and they never sign the contract, he can get redrafted for next year. And it seems like he is dug both of them, the Cincinnati Bengals and Stewart, have dug their feet in the ground. It's like, I'm not signing this contract. It does not benefit me in the slightest. And the Cincinnati Bengals is, well, we put in the contract. This is what we're doing. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense because do you understand how desperate the Cincinnati Bengals should be right now? They currently do not have a pass rusher on this team. Trey Hendrickson, he's holding out. Jermaine Pratt, he's gone. And Shemar Stewart, your first-round pick, is not there. They do not have a reliable pass rush on top of not having a good secondary. So the same defense that prevented them from making the playoffs last year is essentially worse right now. Not because of injury, but because of the Cincinnati Bengals or lack of want to when it comes to signing these players, when it comes to getting the contracts right. Which goes back to my first point. Who you are is always going to seep out, even if you do things differently, or even if you make once or twice. If who you are is always going to, this should not be an issue. He's the only first-round pick. I think he's the only draft pick that is not signed. And don't get me wrong, I understand that, on the Cincinnati Bengals side and people on that side are saying, well, we shouldn't be behest to a player, especially a player that hasn't been in the league. I get that. But do you understand how this makes you look? Do you understand how, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Shemar Stewart is going to just be a gangbuster and going to essentially be the saving grace of the Cincinnati Bengals. But this is a terrible look, not just for now, but for moving forward. Who would want to come to an organization that is treating their players like this, that is putting crazy stipulations and contracts like this? Again, I'm not killing the Cincinnati Bengals for wanting to put that clause in the contract. Even if I don't agree with it, you have every right to do what you want to do when it comes to contracts. You are the person handing out the contracts. But again, Shemar Stewart and any other player that doesn't like the contract has every right not to sign it. And you're doing this to a rookie. It goes back to, man, the organization just continues to just shoot themselves in the foot. And I'm not saying this about money, but it does look like a billionaire trying to be in a $1 billion corporation trying to be frugal when it comes to players, when it comes to contracts, something that the Cincinnati Bengals has historically been in the past, which a lot of people can say has hindered them from growing as a franchise. Again, I said people killed me because I'm like, I said this before, man. Even when Joe Burrow was doing what he was doing, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins doing what they were making it to the Super Bowl, they were making it to the AFC Championship, I stood 10 toes and said, this is a poverty franchise. Don't let winning fool you. Don't let Joe Burrow, Jamar, don't let that fool you. This team is going to show its hand time and time again. And since making it to the AFC Championship, what has happened? They had contract disputes with T. Higgins. They had contract disputes with Jamar Chase. They're having contract disputes with Trey Hendrickson. They had contract disputes with Sam Hubbard, who has since retired. And now this with Shemar Stewart, their rookie, might I add, that they spent a first-round pick on. So for all the people saying, well, they had to because he's wild in the streets. If he was that wild, why spend a first-round pick on him? If you're saying that he's such a detriment to the team off the field that you feel the need to put this stipulation in his contract, why spend a first-round pick on him when there were safer options? That's why it's very hard for me to believe that. What I think, and again, I don't have any sources, what it looks like is they're trying to be frugal. And they understand, just like Shemar Stewart understands, how important he is to this team. And I'm not saying he's asking for astronomical money. What he's asking for is some support and some protection from a team that clearly needs him, and the team is not trying to dish that out. In fact, they're trying to do the complete opposite and protect themselves more than they protect him, which I get it, you're the team, but it's glaring. So I understand completely. And I support, and I think Shemar Stewart is doing everything he needs to correctly. You have to, if no one's going to protect yourself, you have to. And that contract seems very detrimental to oneself. That verbiage. Yes, I understand millions is being like we're talking about millions upon millions of life-changing money. But if you look at the stipulation of that contract, it can get taken away just like that. And honestly, it's really up to the behest of the Bengals. If they feel like the actions are detrimental, they can be the ones to be like, "No, we're taking it." If I was Shemar, I wouldn't step foot on I wouldn't step foot in that organization now until the contract. And if I need to get redrafted, I'm good enough to get redrafted. He was a first-round pick for a reason. He's good enough to get redrafted again, which would be extremely unprecedented, but still. The situation that poverty franchises. Again, I don't know the history, but do you know how when does this happen to teams that aren't considered poverty franchise? When has this ever happened to the Baltimore Ravens? When has this ever happened to the Kansas City Chiefs? When has this ever happened to the Pittsburgh Steelers? When has this ever happened to the Philadelphia Eagles? Like, what are we doing? A first-round pick is essentially away from the team because of your actions. And you can change them at the drop of a dime. You just refuse to. Oh, brother. Hey, man. Shemar, go get your money, bro. And on top of that, protect yourself. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.